All right, hello everybody. Hi, my name is Amalia Weber. I'm the program specialist here at Rochester Hills Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's program, Everything I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant. Before we get started, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. Firstly, tonight's program will be recorded and available to view about 1 week from tonight on our YouTube page and on the RHPL website shortly after. We ask the audience members please silence or turn off their cell phones before we begin in order to avoid any disturbances during the presentation. Even if you feel like it's off, it's never a bad idea to check. We'd also like to thank the Friends of the Rochester Hills Public Library and their many fundraising efforts. It's thanks to their support that we can provide wonderful programming like tonight's presentation. Our next program is Looking at Art Through the Eyes of the Artist, presented by Smart Towns, which will be an in-person event on, let's see if I remember, February 27th, I believe is the date. I forgot to write that down. You can sign up for that at calendar.rhpl.org. Curtis Chin is the founder of the Asian American Writers Workshop in New York City and served as the nonprofit's first executive director. He has written for network and cable television, and his films have been screened at over 600 venues over 20 countries. He is a graduate of University of Michigan and has received awards. The National Yes.
Just clarifying. Okay.
He has also received awards from ABC, Disney Television, New York Foundation for the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts, and more. Without further ado, please welcome our presenter, author and filmmaker, Curtis Chin.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction. How's the mic? Is it okay? Okay, great. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to the reading tonight from my memoir, Everything I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant. And as the title implies, I grew up in a Chinese restaurant. But I like to think of it as not just any Chinese restaurant. I like to think of it as the Chinese restaurant here in Detroit. Okay. How many people here actually got a chance to eat at our family's restaurant? You know, okay. I actually like to ask this question beforehand, just to show you how popular the restaurant was. Guess how many egg rolls we sold in the 65 years that we owned the restaurant? If you read the book, you can't guess. She says that she used to go to our restaurant 2 or 3 times a week.
A week.
Yeah. So, any guesses? You can just shout them out.
2 million.
Okay, 2 million? No, we actually sold over 10 million egg rolls. So, I don't know. Yeah, and these were all handmade, even the skin and the sauce. So they were really good egg rolls. It was a really, really great place to grow up, despite Detroit at the time in the 80s having some really serious issues, right? You had the auto industry that was struggling. There was crack cocaine. There was AIDS. I knew 5 people murdered by the time I was 18 years old. But despite that, we had this really, really wonderful Chinese restaurant, you know, and customers like you know, coming in. And so, you know, for me, this memoir isn't just retracing my own childhood and the things that happened to me, but it's also a thank you to my parents, you know, for giving me and my 5 siblings these wonderful lives, you know, and sacrificing so much. And also a hat tip to our hometown of Detroit, because I think that Detroit still gets a lot of bad rap, and I wanted to show that the city is still capable of producing good things, like me. You know? I'm kidding. So I'm going to read a little bit from the prologue, and then we'll be joined, you know, as a conversation partner afterwards. Okay, so I like to read from the prologue, but the rest of the book is actually structured in 3 sections of 8 stories each, 8. That's good luck to Chinese people. 8 stories in elementary, middle school, 8 in high school, and 8 in college. But the prologue actually starts with my family's journey to Michigan. And there's 2 reasons why I start the book this way. The first is that oftentimes when you read about the Asian American experience, it's all centered on California, Hawaii, New York. You don't really think about Asian Americans being in this part of the country. But my family's been here since the 1800s, right? I mean, so I wanted to share that story a little bit. But I also feel that you can't know a person's story unless you actually know their family story. And so that's why I wanted to start talking about my family. And so I'm going to start by reading the first page from the book. Welcome to Chung's. Is this for here to go? Armed with a smile and a red waiter's jacket with a perpetual plum sauce stain. That's how my dad greeted any new face who entered the lobby of our popular Chinese restaurant in Detroit. Interestingly, my great-great-grandpa Gong Li Chin had faced the same question in the late 1800s as he stood cold and alone on a rickety dock in Guangzhou, China, trying to decide his future and that of his young impoverished family. For here or to go. For here to go, as I got older, it was a question I asked myself. Starting in our restaurant's long and open back kitchen, where my family made some of our most popular items, including the tangiest barbecue pork and best-smelling almond cookies, my mom taught me my first lessons. Before diving into math, English, and geography, she began with a little American history, tales of elders and ancestors, our family as prologue. And so it follows, that prologue starts with my great-great-grandfather, Gong Li Chin, going from Canton, China to Canton, Ohio, before realizing there weren't actually Chinese people there, and then moving up to Detroit, tried to get a job in the auto industry, didn't speak much English, so he didn't have much success. But he was able to get a job doing hand laundry work, and he saved up enough money, opened up his own store on Charlotte, down in the city, and then eventually opened up a grocery store, and then a restaurant in 1940, Chung's Cantonese Cuisine, and instantly it was a big success. I mean, they had late hours. Back then, Detroit was really popping at night. There were things to do. And so, they served everybody. I like to say they had, rich, poor, black, white, Jewish, Christian. They took everybody's money. So, that's the place that I sort of grew up. So the prologue continues on with my family's journey, running that restaurant all the way to the year 1967. So at the time, the country was facing a lot of hardships, racial divisions, and Detroit got hit particularly hard. We had this thing called the Detroit riots, right, where the National Guard was called in, and there was a lot of, destruction and people, getting killed. And so for the first time, my parents actually had to close the restaurant for 5 straight days. But in that time period, they actually managed to find time to have sex. And 9 months later, I was born as their riot baby. And so sometimes people ask me, why do you talk about race and social justice so much? And I always say, without that incident, I probably wouldn't be born, so I kind of have to. That's my thing. And so the rest of the book really does follow that initial question of, is this for here to go? Because I loved Chung's restaurant. It was great being there. My whole family was there. I got all the free food I wanted. But at the same time, the city was literally burning down around me, particularly the Cass Corridor. I mean, there was so much arson and so much death and destruction in that area. And I'm also struggling to figure out my own identity. And so that is the journey of the book, For Here to Go. And I think that's a, relatable story, I think, question that we all, confront at some point in our life. And so that is the book. And it was published on October 17th by Little Brown. And it's gotten a lot of great press. Time Magazine excerpted it. CBS Saturday Morning News did a great 8-minute piece, Take Me Back Here. Also, NBC News came back with me here, and we actually got to go into the old Chung's building, which was really kind of emotional. I just interviewed with PBS NewsHour. I think that segment's going to run next week. But it's gotten a lot of great national press. And I've been on this major book tour. I did 50 readings before the book came out, including 5 in Europe. And then after the book came out to December, I did another 70. And this spring, I'll do over 100 more. So, yeah. I know. A lot of flyer miles. I'm happy to be here, back in Rochester Hills. So I grew up I went to Troy High School, so not too far from here.
Yeah. I do want to ask, I'll let you get settled.
Sure.
But what is it like coming back to the community that you grew up in? You said you went to Troy High School. The whole premise of memoir is about growing up in Detroit. What is it like coming back into the community to talk about your history here?
I love being back home. I mean, I always get a great homecoming. It's especially nice seeing former customers because our family ran this restaurant from 1940 to 2000, the location in Detroit. That lasted until 2000. And it sort of had a very quiet ending. I don't know if you remember that, but I was living in LA at the time. I'm a TV writer. That's my day job, TV and film. And my dad, who I talk to regularly, had just called and said, he says, I'm closing Chung's, at the end of the week. And I'm, what do you mean by you're closing Chung's? And he said that, he's closing down for good. And that shocked me because I always thought that the restaurant would be there, right? Like Cheers, right? Like it's one of those places that's always going to be there. There was some maintenance that needed to happen, and the landlord wasn't willing to do it, and the profit margins were thin. And so he just made the decision that he was going to close down because they also had another location in the suburbs. But when he closed closed down that location, or when he told me he was closing it down, I actually, yeah, it keeps fading in and out.
It might be the antenna. Is the antenna touching anything?
Yeah. Is that better?
It might be.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds better. Okay. So when my dad told me he was going to close it down, I actually said to him, well, you can't just close at the end of the week. You have to tell people, right? You have to give people a chance to come back, right? And, have a last meal or two. But he just really wanted to shut it down. I don't know if it was a matter of that he was embarrassed that the restaurant was closing underneath him, or it would have been hard for him to say goodbye to the customers. But yeah, he just sort of closed it. And so our family never had a chance to give a proper thank you to everybody that supported our restaurant. And so for me, going around and coming back is my chance to sort of say thank you to the customers who came and supported my family and gave us these wonderful lives. And so, yeah, so that's why it's been really, really nice to sort of reconnect. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there was somebody here who stopped to tell you that they went 3 times a week.
5. Every lunch.
3 to 5 every lunch.
Yeah.
How many stories have you had like that of people coming up to tell you how formative your restaurant was for them?
Many. I mean, it's really wonderful. I've had people like some really cool things, like like my dad's friends from high school. One of them came and showed me his yearbook, my dad's yearbook, not my yearbook. And I learned things about my dad, like that. My dad is more similar to me than I thought. If you read in the book, my mom had been thrown in prison when she was like 5 years old in China. And her cousin, who she hadn't seen in all these years, came to one of the readings. It's like really, yeah, all these wonderful things. But the one story that I really love to share is that I did a reading in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it was at a bookstore, and it was a packed reading. And at the end, this woman gets up and she asked people, who here has eaten at Chung's? And nobody else had. But then she started talking about her own childhood and said that was her family's favorite restaurant. They would go there every Sunday for Chinese food. And, her mom has dementia now. And when she told her mom that she was going to the reading of one of the kids from Chung's, her mom started recounting all these dishes in vivid details, including the egg rolls. And she said for the first time in years, she felt like she had her mom back. And so it's really nice, these moments, because when you run a family business, when you run a restaurant, yeah, sure, I knew our restaurant was special. I mean, we always make the best of Detroit list. All these people would always come in and said, oh, I've been coming for generations. But I don't think I understood the depths of that love that people would have, and that's, it really makes me appreciate the work that my mom and dad did even more. You know what I mean? It's a very honorable profession to be, a restaurant owner, a Chinese restaurant owner in the middle of the inner city. So, yeah.
For sure. Tell me a little bit more about your parents and just stories that you remember from them.
Yeah, so this actually might be a good chance for me to actually read one of the stories.
I'm going to hold this just close.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it keeps fading in and out. So the book is set in the 80s, like I said. At that time period, as a gay person, the only thing I saw about gay people was like, they were pedophiles, they were thrown in jail, all this kind of stuff. But worse, there was AIDS. And anytime you read about a gay person in the paper, they were dying, right? Or they died. And so that combined with all the death that I had seen in Detroit, I really didn't think I'd live past the age of 30. I did not think I had a long shelf life. So I didn't know I was going to go to college. I wasn't planning on it. But my mom, who herself had a difficult life, she had an arranged marriage where she came from China to America, knew nothing about Detroit except that it made great cars and even better music. She wasn't a big fan of the restaurant life, to be honest, and so she really wanted us kids to sort of go out there and get an education and sort of find other things for ourselves to do. And so she really pressured me when she found out that I wasn't planning on going to college. She really guilted me, and so I finally rationalized that, what would be giving up 4 years of my life for a woman who's given up her whole life for me? And so I decided to apply to college, but I did have the caveat that I would only apply to one school, right? And if I didn't get in, I'm not going. So I told her to pick wisely. And so she picked Michigan, and sadly I got in. And so I went to college. I didn't know what I was going to study, because I had to work during the day and I took night classes. But interestingly, at 6 p.m., there's a lot of writing classes. So I did the math and I said, if I study poetry and if I wrote haikus, I could graduate in fewer than 500 words. So that was my whole strategy of graduating. And so I guess I wrote a mean haiku because I got into the creative writing program there. It was a pretty good program. They only took 20 undergraduate students, and I was one of them. And so that's sort of where we're at. I also like to mention that, my mom, again, her mantra for us growing up was work hard, be quiet, and obey your elders. And so that's the thing that she drove into our head. And so I think that's all you need to know for this story. One thing is that all the chapters in the book are labeled like a Chinese menu, so they may not make sense, but this is chapter M7. So, okay. Let me take off my glasses. M7. Being a creative writing major made me the literary expert at Chung's. That was inevitable as my dad asked every customer, "Have you met our number 3? He's the writer in the family." Every time he mentioned my program, the number of students accepted got smaller and smaller. At some point, I expected him to say that I was the only one on campus even allowed to own a pen. One week, one of our waiters was out sick. My younger siblings were busy with their weekend activities, so I was the one called in to help. I jumped at the chance to have some home-cooked meals for a few days. I was running around the dining room, refreshing our customers' silver teapots, when a white middle-aged woman reached into her oversized bag and pulled out a colorful hardcover. "Have you read this book? It's so good." The Joy Luck Club, the recently released novel that featured a bunch of old, sassy Chinese ladies who like to eat, gossip, and play mahjong, could easily have been set in our back kitchen. Every time I came in to help at the restaurant, another diner, usually older and female, cited the most memorable characters, lines, and scenes. They all wanted to know if I was working on something similar. I was writing poetry, but they didn't care. To them, all writers were the same. They would squeal, "You could be the next Amy Tan." My mom turned out to be the biggest pusher. She rarely had a book in her hand, but the success of the Joy Luck Club convinced her that her life was a bestseller too. She followed me around the dining room, dropping stories from her childhood, the same ones I'd heard growing up, but now she recounted them as if she was auditioning for her own books on tape. One night, after seeing how our waiters sometimes pooled tips together, my mom shared an oldie. "When the communists marched south, they targeted my family. My uncles and grandpa were rich in America, so the Red Guard called us traitors. My stubborn grandma didn't want to leave her big home, so when my parents escaped to Hong Kong, they left me behind to keep her company. The communists hated me and my pawpaw. When I was 4, they made me watch as they forced my grandma to climb the old banyan tree in our courtyard. Then they pushed her off into a pile of broken glass." For a visual, my mom rubbed her knees. Another time, standing at the water station, she launched into her own nautical tale. "When I was 5, my uncle in America paid $25,000 in renminbi, a king's ransom in people's money, to a local fisherman to ferry our remaining family out of China. After a long ride tucked under the planks of his fishy fishing boat, we came up for air, but we weren't in Hong Kong. The traitor turned us into the authorities. In jail, I had to sing Communist Party songs to earn extra rice for me and my grandma." Another chapter came as we stood beneath the painting of the Chinese countryside. "When my papa and I were released from jail, we found that the officials had given away our home to peasants. We were forced to live several villages away in a dirt hut with 3 other families. Whenever we went out for a pail of water, my grandma had to bend low to keep her head below the soldiers." Once again, she gave me a demonstration, this time bowing her head. Granted, my mom's epic saga interested me. Who wouldn't be intrigued by tales of prison cells, guns, and stolen ransoms? Even the parts about her mundane life in Hong Kong after she was reunited with her parents and siblings were amusing. But these were her stories, not mine. She had to tell them, not me. I was in school to find my own voice. I sat and listened, but that was as far as it would go. Toward the end of the summer, as I was at the back kitchen sipping my red pop, stockpiling poems for the upcoming semester, my mom sat down. Before I could say anything, she started talking. "I was a top student in Hong Kong. When Pepsi came to town, they held a big contest for students to draw a picture of their own school. Mine was the best at Sacred Heart. I won 6 cases. There were so many bottles, I had to give some to the nuns." I threw down my Parker pen, the one I treated myself to after getting into the program. "Yes, and they kept burping all day. It was so funny. Ha ha. you've told me that story over and over, and I don't even like Pepsi. I prefer Coke. My mom's shoulders shriveled. The shine faded from her rosy cheeks. You don't want to hear my story? I tensed up. I do, but I'm behind on my own stuff. Between working at Drake's, The Journal, and Saving the World, my schedule was packed. On top of that, my workshops in the fall were advanced. Still insecure about my place in the program, I put pressure on myself to create more interesting writing by staying up late and scribbling in my notebook every detail of my life. But no matter how hard I tried, working harder could not produce a better poem. My mom lifted herself off her seat. The glint in her eyes orphaned me. Her 42 years of life flashed before my eyes. She'd gone from Guangzhou to Hong Kong to Detroit and spent the past 2 decades raising her 6 children in a hostile foreign land. She tried to prove that her life had worth, that it hadn't gone unnoticed, and here I was, the ungrateful son, writing it off. Her lips quivered in a soft murmur. I hastily picked up the pen, backtracking. Go ahead, Mom, I'll write it down this time. My mom bowed her head as if I were one of the soldiers holding a gun to her temple, ordering her to sing. No, you go on. You do your own thing. I reached out my hand, but by then she'd disappeared through the black swinging door, leaving only the rattling from the kitchen, the clanging woks and rumbling dishwasher. I sat there upset at myself for being so inconsiderate. Everything I'd done in the past 3 years had been for her, but it seemed as though I'd failed the final test. My education wasn't just to help me get a better life, it was for my whole family. We were a team. We were the 8 immortals. How could I let them down like that? I needed to make things right, but I knew that, like most disappointments in our house, apologies were never spoken. Only deeds would bring about reconciliation. So, that's the story of my mom. Took me 30 years, but I finally got her story out. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
This question is going to be a little bit dark. It sounds like, based on the prologue that you shared and just the whole basis for your memoir, it kind of sounds like your family and you life sort of revolved around turmoil, essentially. You mentioned the Detroit riot, you mentioned the AIDS crisis. How does that impact you? How did that impact your writing? Just in general?
I think I'm a person who has always tried to find the silver lining in things and just move forward. I talk about the bookends of my high school experience. Like before entering high school, the summer between middle school and high school, one of our family friends, this guy named Vincent Chin, I don't know if you guys know the murder case here. Does anybody here not know the story? Because if you don't, I'll mention it. So everybody here knows the Vincent Chin story. Oh, that's pretty good. Oh, you don't know it. Okay, so just quick, in the 80s, the height of the anti-Japanese sentiment around here, Vincent Chin was a young Chinese American going out to celebrate his upcoming wedding. These 2 white auto workers come into the bar and they're overheard saying, "It's because you motherfuckers were out of work." And they get kicked out of the bar, and these guys get in their car and they literally drive around the streets of Detroit until they see Vincent sitting outside of McDonald's, and they take a baseball bat and they bash his head in, and they kill him. My uncle was his best man, so it was a case that really shaped me growing up, And then my senior year, one of our favorite customers was this guy named Dr. Alan Canty. Do you guys know the Alan Canty murder here? Oh, that's a pretty famous one too. Alan Canty was a famous, he told us he was the ER doctor, and he'd come in all by himself at strange hours, Turned out he was actually a famous psychiatrist who was coming to the corridor to hire prostitutes, and he was going to break off with this one girl, and the pimp got so upset that he also took a baseball bat, bashed in his head in, and then chopped up his body with a Ginsu knife, and then littered it all across up to the Upper Peninsula. So that's kind of my against my high school. And then obviously with AIDS coming, I think that just really forced me to appreciate life. The line in my book is, as Buddhists, we're taught that there's suffering in life, but this is getting ridiculous in Detroit, So I guess it's just trying to find the humor in these things, and that's what people said. I'm pretty honest about what happened to Detroit in the 80s, because it was a tough time period, but I try to say it. I try to find the humor and the joy of that, because I still feel that despite all these challenges of growing up, in Detroit at that time period, I still feel like I had the best childhood. I loved it. I wouldn't trade it with anybody. I mean, it's weird because I go to these sometimes I'll go to these really expensive schools like Philip Landover or even Cranbrook or whatever. And then, I actually had this one kid at Cranbrook who actually asked me when I was telling my research, she was like, do you get jealous of people who grow up with more money than you? And I'm like, oh, you mean like everybody in this room? And I'm like, no, I don't feel jealous because I loved my childhood, I did say to her, though, that I would feel bad if you didn't appreciate the advantages that you had and that you don't make the most of that. That would make me mad, you know what I mean? But I don't get upset that, I didn't have the stuff that she had because I had the best egg rolls. You know what I mean? I had a really good life. Yeah.
Was there anything that was difficult to retell?
Yeah, there was a lot. It is hard because, as I was saying, it's like my strategy in life has always been to move forward, right? Just to move on. And I think that's okay in life. I don't think you have to remember everything. I don't think you have to recount all the bad things that happen in your life. Sometimes it's okay to forget. But I think that when you're writing a memoir, it's actually the exact opposite, right? You do have to pick at the scabs. You have to reconsider things in your past that maybe you thought that you'd come to peace with and maybe you hadn't. And so it was hard because that's not my personality, right? I mean, but I think once I committed myself to writing a memoir, I felt like that's what you have to do, right? You have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself to rethink about these things and maybe how these episodes in your life may have shaped you. Mm-hmm.
What got you started writing your memoir? Like, what was the final straw that you're like, I need to write this down now? If any.
God, this is becoming really sad. Sorry. My parents were in a car accident in 2005, and my dad died. And so I was writing for the Disney Channel at that time, and I was the one. We all came back, and I actually just went to the cemetery today in the funeral home. When he passed, it was just really hard for all of us, right? And I was the one who had to sell the family business. I was back there for 6 months, and the Disney Channel wanted me to come back and work on another show, but I just was not in the mood to tell humor or to pitch jokes. And then that's when I've sort of shifted careers where I started doing more documentaries and more stories about Detroit or issues of being Asian American or being gay, like more personal stuff. And so that's sort of how it all started, this idea of writing more personal pieces. But the book really came about when, so after the accident, my whole immediate family left because my mom was injured, and we moved her out to Northern California where my brother was, and my brother's a doctor. And so when they started having kids, all my siblings out there, I just thought it was really sad that we'd have this next generation of our family who knew nothing about this 100-year history in Detroit and Michigan. And so I really started writing the stories for them, yeah.
Thank you, and I'm sorry that
this is so
eliciting such sadness. I hope this does not lead to more sadness for your sake.
Okay.
What is your writing process like? Are there any challenges that you have learned to overcome in it, or just do you have a process?
I don't have a set process unless I'm on a deadline. Where something has to get done. Otherwise, I'm pretty open about it. Other writers will ask me, do you ever get writer's block or things like that? And I say no, because I enjoy it so much. It's so much fun. But I also think that there are other things that are important to the writing process beyond just putting, pen to paper or typing your thing. I like to talk about the fact that, I'm a kid that grew up in a Chinese restaurant. I didn't grow up reading. Like a lot of people at times will ask you, what was the book that inspired you to become a writer? And I'm like, I didn't have one because, I grew up in Chung's. The only two type of books that we had were the ones left behind by our customers. And they were either Harlequin romances or the Bible. And as a closeted gay Asian Buddhist, I had zero interest in either one of those books. And so I just didn't read as a kid. But I say to these people that tell me they want to be a writer is that even though I didn't read a lot, there were other things happening which set me up to be a writer. Most importantly, I was an engaged person, right? I developed ideas, I listened, I paid attention to what was going on. These are all really essential things, to be a writer. You have to have a perspective on life, right? And yeah, you can get that from reading books, but you can also get that from observing the world around you and listening to people. And so I tell people, don't feel bad if you don't have a traditional education to become a writer. Anybody can be a writer as long as you're first and foremost a human being, and you care about things, and you have a philosophy and things that you want to share with people. And so, so my process is really just, very loosey-goosey.
Sure. Mm-hmm. What was some formative media for you growing up? Music, TV, etc.?
Well, if you read the book, I was a young Republican during high school, and so I was the Asian Alex P. Keaton. I don't know if this means anything to people. Okay, yeah, I was a class president of the National Honor Society. I co-founded the Young Republican Club, Students Against Smoking. Margaret Thatcher was my imaginary girlfriend. So, yeah, but I changed. That's part of the journey in the book. But yeah, so I mean, like TV had a different role back then. I mean, it was the era where you had to rush to the TV at a certain time period to watch a certain episode, because if you didn't, then you'd have to wait 6 months before the rerun air again. I don't know if people are old enough, to remember those era. Yeah. It was a much different, era. We didn't really go to the movies very often because we were always working. Although there is a story in this book, about Bruce Lee and going to see a Bruce Lee film at the Fox Theater as a kid. So that was like the one movie that we went to. Yeah.
I do relate to the reruns because I grew up out in the boonies.
Oh, okay.
If it wasn't on DVD, we couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Do you know if the name of the restaurant ever changed from Chung's throughout its history?
I think maybe the first location might have been slightly different, but then I think the one I grew up in was Chung's Cantonese Cuisine. I think they added the Cantonese cuisine. I think it might have just been Chung's, the first location. Yeah. But in terms of my family, so my great-grandfather is the one who started it, but he had like 10 kids. And so there are other restaurants around here that are sort of connected to my family, like Chin's in Livonia. I don't know if you guys know that restaurant. That's my... Chin Tiki was our family too. Manjin Lao is my great-grandmother's place. Yeah, she's not my bio great-grandmother. She's my great-grandfather's third wife, so she still runs that place. So my family's had our tentacles in so many different restaurants around here. Yeah.
Do you know what the building that was Chung's is used for now?
So when we closed it, the place has actually remained empty for 20-odd years. And it recently sold because that area of Detroit is now starting to gentrify, right? And the new owner actually went through the trouble of tracking me down in LA, asking me if I would consider reopening Chung's. And for about 5 seconds, I was like, I could do, And then I was like, wait a second, I'm on a book tour. There's no way I could do this. And so, and then a few months later, he called me and said, okay, I think I have someone who might be moving in. And I was a little sad because, that corner of Cass and Peterborough was always Chung's. It was always our place. But then I thought, okay, well, whoever moves in there, hopefully they have as much success, joy, and happiness that my family had all those years on that corner. And then a few days later, I reconsidered again, and I thought, okay, have success for about 5 years, then fail, and then I can come over and bring back Chung's. So, yeah. Yeah.
If you could choose, would you ultimately choose to reopen Chung's, or would that building be used for something else?
Ideally. In a perfect world, Chung's never would have closed. It would still be part of, Detroit history, right? And I think that's something about Detroit, because there was so much destruction in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that as Detroit is starting to rebuild itself, right, there's a big gap in memory and connection to that past pre-65, and it would be really wonderful to have one of those restaurants that did, that did have a long history like that. So, but at the same time, I'm honest. I don't live here anymore. I don't, so what people decide to do with that is really up to whatever. The one thing I do say about that, though, is that don't forget the people that stayed. Don't forget the people like the booksellers, Source Booksellers, who was based in the corridor. You know what I mean? They stayed. They continued working. You know what I mean? Believing in the city. So please, it's great that new people are coming in and trying to bring new energy and resources to the city. But, please remember the people that stayed and work with them, and support them as well. So.
If you could have a conversation with young Curtis, what would you want to share with him? Or is there any advice or anything that you'd want to tell him?
Don't be a Republican. Yeah.
All right, I have just a couple more, and then I do want to open
Okay.
it up to the audience because I'm sure they've got plenty of questions.
Okay.
But how do you feel about library events like this, where you get to talk to library patronage? What is that ecosystem like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. I mean, out of the 100-odd readings I've done, I would guess I've done maybe 15, 20 libraries, which has been really wonderful. I mean, just this past weekend, I did readings at the Troy Public Library, West Bloomfield, and Grosse Pointe, and then also Detroit. Did I say Detroit Public Library? Troy? Did I say Troy Public Library? Okay, I did that one. So yeah, I've done 5, and so it's been fun. I mean, it's an energetic crowd. I don't think of it's a difference as between, say, like a bookstore. Why? Do you want to say something about library crowds?
Not necessarily. I was just,
Okay.
I was interested to see what you thought,
Okay.
how you felt about it. But yeah, that's it from me. Does anybody else have questions? Yeah, I'm going to leave this with you.
Oh, I'm going to take a picture first.
Sure.
I always do this. So if you follow my Instagram feed, see. Wait, oh, my phone's back here. Quickly, I'll do this quick. If you follow my Instagram feed, I like to take a selfie, and then I post it up. So you can check yourself out and see how cute you look. Okay. Can you stand behind me and hold the book?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Okay. I'm not the best at this, so give me 1 second. Okay, does that look okay?
Yeah, you, tilt it this way.
Tilt it this way?
The other way. Yep, there you go.
Okay, is that everybody in there? Okay, I'm going to take one more. I'm trying to get those people in the end. Okay, one of those will work. Thank you, everybody. So now we'll take questions from the audience. Okay.
Here, and I'm just going to hand this to you.
Okay. Sure.
I grew up in Detroit, went to Cass Tech, and in the 70s, there was songs for Chinese, and then there was everybody else.
Yep.
I mean, that was the place to be. Why do you think that in Detroit, unlike other cities, the idea of a Chinatown never really took hold?
I mean, it's obviously immigration, right? Like people come to where they think there are jobs and opportunities. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't come to Detroit. Part of it is that they didn't get the jobs in the factories, so there was a lot of side things. I don't know, but we came.
Yeah.
Oh, you have a.
Back through like the early 60s, there actually was a Chinatown at like 3rd and Porter area. They tore it down for urban renewal and built the Lodge Freeway over it.
Where was that at?
3rd and Porter.
Yeah, that one at its peak, I think they said had about 4,000 people.
Yeah, it was about
Yeah,
2
so-
or 3 blocks long. My mother actually grew up in that area in the 30s and 40s.
Oh, was your mom Dorothy?
Matsumoto.
Oh, okay, yeah. Your mom was best friends with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's a small world.
it is.
Yeah. I have footage of your mom, you know.
Yeah, Filmmaker actually got me.
Oh, he gave it to you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Oh, good. Okay. Hi.
Besides the missing the food, what do you miss about the Detroit area?
I was going to say the sports teams. What do I miss about Detroit? I mean, wait, you said food? I miss the
Besides
people.
the food.
I miss the people. Yeah, I mean, I always feel like a
How
Detroiter.
is the vibe different from LA?
I don't even know where to start.
How do you describe Detroit to your LA friends?
I will always feel like a Midwesterner. I mean, one of the things about when you work in Hollywood is oftentimes, who are you as a writer, And when I was being pitched in the early days, like when I was first starting, you have to figure out like who you are. And it's interesting because, I could be pitched as a gay writer, I could be pitched as an Asian writer, but I oftentimes, felt most comfortable being pitched as a Midwestern writer, because I feel like, I don't know if there's like certain values or just understanding, just a way of seeing the world. I don't know. There's something quintessential about just being from the Midwest. And definitely as a Detroiter, I feel like there's that fighting spirit, because I root for the underdogs a lot more, maybe, because I felt like our city was always under attack from people, Maybe that taught me also to not believe the hype when people say shit about things, So I don't know, yeah. Sorry, I feel like I should be psychoanalyzed. Okay, hi.
So in this journey of writing your family story, has that caused any grief among family members, the way you present things? Has that been an issue at all or not?
Well, first of all, my family hasn't read the book, and they don't plan on reading it. According to my sister, she has no interest in learning about my sexual awakening, so it's totally fine. You know what I mean? But I always say, like, when I do post things on Facebook, they do click like, so I think that means they're supportive. Yeah. So, yeah. And I am thinking about writing a next book. And so they've been really forthcoming. So this book is, so when I first started writing this book, it really was supposed to just be a more comedic one for my middle-aged years, right? But then George Floyd got murdered, and there was this rise of anti-Asian hate in this country and COVID. And then I thought, like, okay, well, maybe my book can actually speak to this moment and maybe address some of these issues. And so I aged it, and I started also talking about my high school years and my college years. But I have another 20 stories that didn't make it into this book, which I said to my agent, if this book sells, we'll sell a second book called Leftovers. It's like all the books that didn't make it into this one. Yeah. But I'm starting to think more, especially in the last couple of weeks as I've been on this journey back here in Michigan, is that I think the second memoir actually should be about my dad's passing, and that's why I went back to the cemetery today, and that's why I went back to the home, and but I did start warning my siblings this time, because I didn't warn them the first time. I said, I'm going to write a book, and I didn't really think about like how it might affect the people around me. But now, writing the second one, I think that I definitely have asked them, and they seem really more forthcoming. Because like during that process of writing the first one, I would ask them for stuff, but they didn't really want to share, except for my mom. My mom was the one who actually did share a lot, but my siblings didn't. But with this second one, it seems like they do want to, they're more forthcoming in wanting to help. So I think that's a good sign, right? Yeah. There and then.
I have a question. I'm writing a lot of family history because if I don't do it, nobody else will.
Yeah.
And but some stories that really are will color a certain person in a bad light. Do you share? Are you honest, or do you skip over that type of thing?
So the question is writing about certain family members and how you present them, right? So if you read my book, my grandmother comes off as the villain. The very first line in the book is Mo Young, which is useless, which is what she would call us, right? So I had a really, really bad relationship with her growing up. But interestingly, so when I was doing all these readings before the book came out, right? I did one in Texas in like March, and the host actually had gotten after the reading. The host had come, said they'd gotten to the restaurant early, so they said, "Oh, meet us early." And I said, "Okay." So I called an Uber. I went downstairs to the street to wait for the car to show up. And standing on the street corner is this old Chinese lady, and she turns around and she sees my sweatshirt, which said Detroit versus everybody. And she's like, "Oh, are you from Detroit?" And I say, "Yeah." And she's like, "I'm from Detroit too." And it turned out that her mom was best friends with my grandmother. And so then she started saying all these things about my grandmother, like, oh, she's the nicest person. Like, she has all this candy in her pocket, you know what I mean? She taught me how to, like, drink American coffee. And I'm like, that's not the woman I knew, But she's really trying to convince me that my grandmother is this really wonderful person. And I'm not trying to convince her, because I wouldn't want my grandmother to go through life unloved. I'm glad somebody loved her. It just wasn't me, you know what I mean? And so I get in the car, right, thankfully, and I speed off. And, like, I think a couple days later, I realized realized that was probably my grandmother sending an emissary from the grave to tell me that like you miswrote her. So my theory about this is that, you know, even if your family's dead and buried, they're still not going to like what you wrote about them. So you may as well write it anyway. And I think you have to hope that you're a good person and you're writing for good reasons, right? You're not trying to settle a score or anything, and you're a compassionate person. And I think if you use that as your guide, right, then I think it should be okay. But the reality is that you could write 10 wonderful, glowing pages about someone and then write one sentence about them, and they're only going to remember that one sentence, you know? And so if you're gonna worry about how other people are going to respond, then I think that will just destroy you from writing it. Just know that I don't know you, but hopefully you're a good person. You know what I mean? Yeah, but hopefully you're a good person and you have good intentions. And if that's your guide, then I don't think you have to worry. Yeah. So, okay. Oh, okay.
Mine's a two-parter.
Okay.
Who was the little old man at the restaurant? Was that your grandfather who used to answer the phone? Hello, Chong.
It could be my grandfather. He was small.
Is
Yeah.
that him?
Yeah.
So cute.
Yeah,
Loved
Tom.
him.
Yeah.
And what was in those egg rolls?
Well, I personally think that the key to the egg roll was the skin, because we actually made the skin ourselves, right? So the egg rolls took 2 days to make, right? So like my grandmother would, like, you know, she'd have this batter, and then like she had like 3 pans, you know, each with a slightly higher heat, right? And then she'd like ladle it in, and then she'd move them over, right? Like it was yeah, and then she made the sauce herself. But the secret ingredient in the egg roll, though, is Jif's peanut butter. I put that in the book. So it's yeah. But I discovered later on it's a Chicago thing, because our first cook that we hired in 1940 came from Chicago.
Yeah, our peanut butter was velvet.
Oh, well, I don't know about the brand, but just the idea of using peanut butter, that's a Chicago thing. But yeah, we use Jif's peanut butter, so. You're all going to run home now and make egg rolls with Jif peanut butter now, right? It's like, oh, what is this like? Yeah.
And was it shredded bok choy or was it cabbage?
Cabbage. Yeah. So, I'm not going to, don't hold me to this, but so the paperback book is coming out later, but when that happens, I might be tempted to do a pop-up here in Detroit. Let's see. Don't hold me to it, but like if I'm in a really good mood, and if I can coax my siblings to come back and help out, I think I'd like to do it. Not the whole menu, but maybe a few of our greatest hits, like the almond boneless chicken, you know that, you know. So anyway.
Roast pork with Chinese greens.
We could go. We can go all night doing this. Okay. Oh, did you say there was a question back here? Okay. Hi.
What's your advice for the queer youth growing up today?
I usually have more advice for people who want to write, but for queer youth, I'm not really sure. I actually sometimes wonder if I know what's going on with you all, because our generation is so different. We had AIDS. I mean, it really is so different. I think back that you guys have this term that you guys use called saying it gets better, right? We didn't have that back then. Literally, I try to think back and like, what were the things that gave me hope back then? And we didn't have it. It was really, really a devastating time to be gay and lesbian. So I'm glad that you guys, you know, have these opportunities. I'm glad that you guys have support. I guess the one thing that I would say to you is that maybe the community feels like they're under attack now because of a lot of book bans and laws that are coming up now, targeting particularly trans members of the community. But overall, the arc of justice bends. Is that the term? I always screw up that quote. But I think that looking back, things are still pretty good. We're marching towards progress, right? And so be confident, and keep pressing forward, and most importantly, vote. Get out and vote. Yeah, because. There are things happening that we don't even know. I'll share one with you guys, right? My publicist told me not to talk about this, but I don't care. After I sold my book, I got really excited, so I called my old high school, or I emailed my old high school and asked them, hey, I'd love to do an event here, right? I emailed Shore High, and the librarian was like, great, yeah, we'll organize something. We worked out all the details. Then 2 months before the event, she emails me again and says, hey, I really am looking forward to our event. Can we do a second event at Troy, Athens? And I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll show them. And then, a week later, I get an email from her saying that she can't do either event. And I'm like, why? And she's like, typically we don't invite authors who are not part of the curriculum. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And so I asked her, well, how can I be part of the curriculum? And she's like, oh, well, you have to talk to the assistant superintendent, right? And so I've mentioned this to lots of people in the education system, and they said that's all bullshit. You know what I mean? So basically, I feel like my book did get canceled by my own high school. Like I wanted to do a reading there, but I'm not allowed on the premise to read my books there. So, yeah. But I think that being gay is part of that. You know what I mean? I think that talking about issues, hot button issues like racism and stuff like that is part of that too. So, but despite that, I do think that, young people still have access, even if, you're fighting these things, right? I don't think we'll ever go back to the old days, like the way that we grew up back in the 80s. And for people who even grew up before that. So be confident, be happy. So be gay. Okay.
High school is such formative years. The events that you described, so what would you say was probably the most difficult event, and what would you say was the most motivating event out of high school?
I think the most difficult was probably growing up behind my brother, who was like a golden child. Like everything he did, yeah. I don't know. I loved high school. I did all those great things. I was even on the Wheel of Fortune when I was in high school. I had a great high school career, despite all the difficulties. I mean, I don't know. And what was the second part of the question?
So the other part was, what events in high school do you think were probably the most motivating events for your life?
I don't know. I really can. I mean, like even when I think back on the book, like how did certain stories end up in it versus other? I don't know if there was like one major cataclysmic thing. I mean, obviously the Vincent Chin story, started me off in high school, but this idea of wanting to fit in, but I was successful doing it, so I don't really know what challenges. I mean, I could list a litany of things, but they're all kind of stupid and superficial. You know what I mean?
That's high school.
Yeah. Well, like making the scene, like junior year, we had to make the float, and we hadn't done anything, and we had like 2 days. You know what I mean? And everybody else had given up, but then me and this small cohort of like 3 people were like, okay, we're not gonna lose. You know what I mean? And so we just worked nonstop for 2 days, and we made this fucking float that won. That beat this, and it beat my brother, who was the senior class. So I denied him of that. So I don't know. Is that pivotal? Yeah, okay, beating my brother, that was pivotal.
Sibling rivalry.
Yeah, sibling rivalry is always a big deal. But yeah, no, like I said, I had a great childhood despite all the challenges I've mentioned. I mean, for me, I try to like focus on the good, fun things that have happened. Being on the Wheel of Fortune was fun. I don't know. Yeah. So. Hi.
On a lighter note, back to food. So my son lives over just outside Guangzhou right now, in Jiaojing, and his girlfriend came back and met her for the first time. We were talking about egg rolls, and she told us, they don't exist there.
Yeah.
Did your family create their own? She said, yeah, no, we just don't have egg rolls in China.
Yeah.
So your family just created your own style of it?
I think they're called spring rolls, right? Is there anybody here from China? Yeah, they call them spring rolls because the transliteration, because they don't use egg as part of it. So that's why they don't have egg rolls there. But they do have spring rolls, right? But yeah, no, the one dish that my family said we created was the almond boneless chicken. If you guys are foodies or you guys like food shows, there's a show called America's Test Kitchen. And so they asked me to produce an episode because they read my book and they're like, oh, your grandmother says you created, almond Bowl's chicken, right? Prove it. so, so I had to do this research into it. So that's the episode I produced for them. So that's the one thing that we sort of said that we created. Yeah. It's so funny though, because if you read the book, you'll know that I'm the one family member who couldn't cook. Everybody else is really good at it, except for me. Every time they went into the kitchen to cook, I was the one sent to go to the dining room to set the table. So it's really kind of funny that I'm sort of like the food expert right now. So I did the piece for America's Test Kitchen. I wrote a piece for Bon Appetit that got selected for Best American Food Writing. CNN's asked me to write a piece on my favorite Chinese restaurants in America. Somehow I'm the Chinese food expert now. yeah.
That relates to my question.
Sure.
Is,
Are there any other questions before hopping back to you? Okay, there's one back there, and then I'll hop up to you if you don't mind.
Did you end up coming out to your parents, and what was that conversation like?
That's in book 2. Yeah, it doesn't happen in this book, huh?
After college?
After college. Yeah, part of it is that people have asked me, like in the writing of it, of the book, I didn't feel it was unsatisfying. Maybe there is expectation that you would come out to your family in it, but my philosophy is that as a gay person, it's something that you're always doing throughout your life anyways. I'm 55 years old and I'm still constantly coming out. I just came out to all of you, you know what I mean? And so it's like that is not the issue in life, is who you come out to. The one person that it matters is just yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, then once you feel comfortable with it, then you make the determination of when you feel safe to come out, when it's appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't matter if I came out to my parents or not in the book, So, but there's a very, very funny scene involving a Big Boys restaurant in Detroit where that scene happened. And so if maybe that'll make it into book 2. So, yeah. Do you want to ask a question?
my question is, I've not been happy with the Chinese restaurants around my area.
What do you want me to do about it?
Where is a good Chinese restaurant to go?
Where do you live?
I live in Auburn Hills, or Rochester Hills.
Oh, up here? I don't know. I mean, people used to talk about yeah, I don't know. You'll have to take their recommendations.
That's what I hope you tell me.
Yeah. I know that when I was growing up, Kim's in Troy was pretty good, right? I like my family's restaurant, Chin's, because that's the one that's the most similar to Chung's, the recipes. Of the food. That's in Livonia, though. But out here, I don't know. Yeah. Hi.
Your family in that, do any of your siblings still live in the Metro Detroit area, or have they all moved out?
They all moved out because, so my brother was the first, the doctor, he was in the Bay Area, and then when we moved my mom out there, everybody just sort of gravitated out there to sort of be there to support her, and they just all ended up there. But I'm in Los Angeles, but I get up there enough. I go there maybe 3 times a year or so, yeah. So, but I don't know. I'm kind of sick of LA, so I've been using my book tour as an opportunity to also do real estate venture. Like where in the country would I like to live? And who knows? Maybe I'll be back in Detroit at some point. Yeah.
It would be way cheaper, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Although, if you really want cheap real estate, go to Oberlin, Ohio. You can get a house for $188,000. Yeah, but you have to live in Oberlin, Ohio. Yeah. But I heard that the property down in the Midtown area is actually pretty expensive now. Like it's like $500,000-$600,000 for a condo. I mean, which is still much cheaper than Los Angeles, but still, it's not the bargain basement prices that it was even just like 5 years ago, I think, right? Yeah.
The demand is there.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's exciting that there's all this energy. I mean, it's really unrecognizable from the Cass corridor that I grew up with. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah. They have joggers there now. People are running, but for different reasons. Any other questions?
I saw your interview, I think it was on CBS, and you mentioned that the clientele of the restaurant was very different from day to night. Lawyers and judges during the day, and
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
As somebody who wasn't in the kitchen, was setting tables and in the front of the restaurant, did you have much opportunity to interact and have conversations with the people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. So people ask me, given the title of the book, right, everything I learned in a Chinese restaurant, what did you learn? I always like to say that the very first lesson I learned came as a child from my parents. When you're a kid, oftentimes your parents say, don't talk to strangers. My parents actually gave me the exact opposite instruction. They said talk to strangers, and who they were talking about were the people sitting in the dining room, because my mom didn't have a chance to graduate high school. My dad went to community college for 2 semesters before he had to drop out and work in the restaurant. So they didn't necessarily know what kind of economic opportunities existed outside those 4 walls of Chung's, but they knew they had a dining room full of people who did. And so anytime my dad met somebody who he thought had like a cool job or just seemed really happy, he'd call all 6 of us kids to run over and barrage these people with questions of like, what do you do for a living? How did you get your job? How much money do you make? You know? And so that idea of like talking to people who are different from me, I mean, is something that I've taken with me, and it's why I've been able to literally travel the world and, you know, have conversations with people. But I think related to that, it also taught me 2 valuable lessons of don't be afraid to ask questions. Right? If you don't know something, ask. And the second one is, if you need help, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? And so these really fundamental things that, you know, my parents really taught me about how to interact with people, particularly people who are, you know, different from me. And when you're a gay, Asian, Buddhist, working class from Detroit, you're going to find lots of people in the world who are different from you. And so it's like, how do you navigate that, right? How do you somehow find a connection to sort of, you know, be able to relate to them? And so that's a gift I think that my parents sort of gave me. There? And then, okay.
Are you going to do any more film or TV writing, or just concentrate on novels and books?
I hope so. You know, so I have 2, well, I had one project that got killed because of the Writers Guild strike. It was a 1-hour with Warner Brothers, but it's fine. My heart wasn't totally into that project, and I have a kids show with PBS that technically the option runs out at the end of this month. I don't think we're going to move forward, but I've been working on it for 3 years. It's actually a kids show based in Detroit, you know, in Detroit's Chinatown, you know, but sadly, I don't know if it's going to, yeah. They said they want to pick up the option, but I don't know if they will.
Anybody optioning the book?
We'll see. I meit's being sent out, you know, you know, so fingers crossed. But I've worked in the industry long enough to know that it's striking that balance of getting excited about stuff, but then not getting so excited when it doesn't happen. It's like, yeah, it's a weird thing. So it is, but I definitely have a vision of what I do. So one of the things I do when I'm in the hotel, you know, waiting to come out and do these talks is I've been working on my writing. So in addition to the memoir, you know, about my dad passing, I've been working on a screenplay, because when you write a novel or when you write a book, you can option it and people can just take it from you and then they bring in their own writers. But you know, if you want to attach yourself to it, then I have to have are you a writer yourself then?
I was in LA for 25 years.
Oh.
I worked in the film business.
Okay, yeah. So I need to have a spec script that matches the tone of what I would want. And so that's what I'm doing. Well, yeah, one of my best friends, his son was the star of Fresh Off the Boat, right? And so he wants his son to be in it, but I don't know. People have also asked me, like, who do you want to play you in the TV version? And I'm like, Harry Shum Jr. And then my friends are like, no, not who do you want to be your boyfriend? Who do you want to play you? So, yeah, that's a good thing, and that's one of the things I do talk about, like, you know, the difference of how the media landscape has changed for Asian Americans from when I was a kid to when I was breaking in to what it is now. So just quickly, for people who are interested in it, when I was a little kid, right, you know, there were maybe 70 shows on the air. You did maybe 28 to 30 episodes a year, but you needed about 25, 30 million viewers to be a hit show, to get a renewed second season, right? Or next season. By the time I broke into TV about 15, 20 years ago, those numbers had changed. There were more shows in production, about 100 shows, right? Slightly more, but you know, the number of viewers needed for it to be considered successful had dropped to like 10 or 12 million, but also the number of episodes they did also dropped to about 22 to 24. This past season, right, I think that someone told me there was like 600 shows in production, but the difference is that the number of episodes you do are only about 8 to 10, right? And the number of viewers necessary for that show to get a second season or a renewed season is only about 1 million, right? And so when you're coming from a community like the Asian American community, right, the chances of you getting a show on are much, much higher because we can hit 1 million viewers. We can't hit 25, 30 million viewers, right? It's hard for us. Our stories are just, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so that's why it's changed. But where the downside is, because you're only doing 8 to 10 episodes, it's really hard to make a living now, you know? And I have friends who were on Emmy-nominated shows this past season who are literally living on food stamps. Do you know what I mean? And it's tough because they've also cut back on, you know, there's no syndication anymore because on streaming, writers only get paid for that one time that they filmed it, right? In the old days, you know, you would film a show and then it'd be sold in syndication to local stations. That's where the big money was. And so it's really, really become harder. For me, the way I've been able to sort of address that is that not all of my income comes from TV and film. I sold a book. You know, I do speaking gigs, do you know what I mean? I wrote journalism pieces. It's like you just have to cobble together, you know, different sources of income. But it's become really, really hard. But at the same time, the chances of getting a show on the air that you created has gone up. So, yeah. Did you move back here to continue work, or the film industry here? Or?
When we had the last film incentive,
Oh.
for Film Detroit to bring projects to Detroit.
Yeah, I just met with someone yesterday, you know, who, she's originally from Detroit, but she'd gone to Columbia Film School, and she came back here because of that, right? And she was all excited the first couple years when she moved back. She was getting lots of work, right? But then after that, it's really been hard, you know, so hopefully they'll bring back that tax incentive. Oh, good. Good luck. Did you have one more question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is there anything that you wish somebody would ask you? Like, is there something that you really want to talk about that nobody's asked about yet?
That's a great way to finish.
Did you go to the championship game?
I didn't go to the championship game, and I didn't go to the Rose Bowl, even though I live in LA, because you know, I did get. So the University of Michigan has actually been really, really wonderful in terms of supporting my book. You know, everybody in the alumni office was forced to read my book. But also, you know, so like when they went out for the Rose Bowl, they invited me. I got courtside seats for their pep rally and stuff like that. You know, because they were really excited because I'm doing so many books, they can actually, you know, work with me. You know, normally they just do sporting events, right? That's the only thing they have for alumni, right? But they wanted something else. And because I am doing so many events, they can do it. Like if you're an author and you're only doing like 3 or 4 events or 10 events, they're not going to, you know what I mean? It's not worth it for them to get invested. But because I'm literally doing like 100 events, do you know what I mean? It was something that they could do, they could support. And so they've been really excited about it and giving them, you know, opportunities to make sure that the alumni is engaged, not just through sporting events. So, but yeah, I'm still thinking about that question that nobody has asked. I mean, you know, a lot of people ask. Like, I do know it's always awkward when people ask me about my husband that makes a cameo in the book. So, you know, that's a little Easter egg. So if you guys haven't read the book and want to read the book, you'll get a nice little cameo from my future husband. So, anything else? Okay. Oh.
You went from haikus to screenwriting to memoirs and novels, but you did journalism in between there to kind of branch out like a robust career. Those are all very different styles of writing. Did you grapple with anyone in particular that just wasn't smooth to step into, or is it just something that you kind of organically go, well, I'm going to try this now? You had to think a little bit about that and that.
Yeah.
And then,
Are you a writer yourself? Oh, okay. So, like I said, I didn't know what I was going to do going into college, so I sort of stumbled into poetry, and so it seemed to be okay. So I moved off to New York, I started, my first job was literally standing in the middle of Times Square passing out flyers, trying to get people to go to a Broadway show. But I was, able to just, work on my writing on the side. And I actually, by the age of 25, I won the NYFA, the New York Foundation for the Arts, which is the largest poetry prize in the state of New York. You know what I mean? I was the chair of the State Arts Council for the, certain panels, the New Jersey State Arts Council. So I was really rocking it there. But then I met this boy who lived in Los Angeles, and I decided to give up New York for LA. And I always tell people, it's like, in New York's a great place to write poetry because you're hearing different sounds, different languages, you're smelling different things on the subway. It's beautiful. But then in LA, you're sitting in your car listening to Ryan Seacrest. And so you're probably not going to write a lot of good poetry. And so that's when I switched over to do screenwriting. And so, that's been fun. And then I switched again to do documentaries after my dad passed away, because I want to. But I will say that I feel like, even though it seems like I've hopped around a lot, I think that the memoir is actually a culmination of everything, because I wrote the memoir as a poet. Meaning I paid attention to every word, I paid attention to imagery, I paid attention to language. And I feel confident to say that I did a good job, because copy editors, who are known as the crankiest people in publishing, right? Because all they do is proofread, and so my copy editor actually wrote back to my editor and said, please tell Mr. Chin this was an eye-opening, well-written, fascinating memoir. I really enjoyed reading it, right? And so I told all my other writer friends this, and they're all like, what? My copy editor didn't say bullshit about my book, So I know I did a good job, that. And the humor that I put in the book is from my TV writing stuff, right? Even though the Washington Post called it cheesy, it's okay. They still gave me a front page article, so I'm not complaining. And then the social justice stuff is the documentaries I make. So in some ways, the book is the culmination of all the voices I've worked in. And at the end of the day, it's like, as a writer or any creative person, what you have is you have your perspective, right? You have your vision, you have the thing that you want to say. The genre that you use oftentimes is dictated by the job opportunities that you're given, right? And so it's very natural, I think, to move from other.
Time where you were just trying to force feed it because that's the genre that dictated.
Well, I mean, when I moved out to LA, I mean, it did take me a while to become a paid screenwriter, right? Because you have to build connections, you have to work as an assistant, all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel forced, because it was fun for me. I was learning a new genre, right? I was learning new skills, in writing, that I didn't have to use as a poet, right? Dialogue was always fun for me, right? I always saw it as an opportunity. And even with the more serious stuff I'm doing now, part of it is that my agents were like, well, you sold a book now, you need to have nice writing credits, you know what I mean? And so that's why I started doing some of the journalism pieces, for CNN and, Bon Appetit and stuff like that. It's just because I have to look like a serious person. So I had to do that. And so I've been pretty lucky. I work hard, but I've also been lucky, you know what I mean, that these things have happened, that I've gotten these opportunities. Yeah, so, knock on wood. I feel very blessed that I've been able to have a successful writing career, so.
What's your advice for writers who are just starting out?
My advice is that in this field, you're going to hear the word no a lot. Don't let that voice be your own. Always say yes to yourself, right? Even if someone says no to you, figure out how to turn that into a yes, right? So believe in yourself. But that doesn't mean don't listen to advice from other people. It just means, stick to your guns to it and learn how to actually, take good advice from people. So you want to be a writer?
One of the things I looked at.
Oh, okay. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Did you have a question too then? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, two-part question. When you have writer's block, what do you do to get over that? And number two, any plans of writing a fiction?
Are you a writer as well?
No,
Oh, okay. I actually don't get writer's block. And the professional writers that I've talked to, they also said they don't get writer's block. Yeah. I think maybe it's that definition of what is writer's block, right? Because I feel like if you're always engaged, that doesn't mean that there aren't certain days where I don't write, but I'm at least, if I'm not writing, I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm reading, I'm doing all these other things, right? I'm taking notes in my head, you know, like that's been one of the great things, because I've been driving around Michigan, right, for the last week. I have books on tape I'm listening, you know, a grief memoir, you know, I'm in the hotel, you know, I'm taking notes at breakfast, you know, like collecting my thoughts, right? So it's like I'm always thinking, I'm always trying to create. So I've never really had writer's block. Was that the first part of the question and the second part? Okay.
The second part was any plans of writing a fiction, piece of fiction?
Like a fiction book?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, the next challenge for me, though, and I don't know if this will happen, but is the piece that I wrote for Bon Appetit. The producer guy who did Rent and Avenue Q and Spring Awakening, all those things, he's considering turning that into a Broadway musical. So that would be fun. I've never done that before. Yeah. So I don't know if that'll happen.
Is there any time of the day that you feel you write better, or is there any times of the day that you set aside routinely to do writing?
I don't have a routine like that, but I'm a night owl, you know, so I do like to stay up late. But yeah, no, I'm not strict like that. I know it works for other writers to have a regimen, right? To say like, okay, I wake up at 5 a.m., I do this and I do this, but I think that it's because I grew up in a Chinese restaurant, because the thing I learned about studying, right? Because I was always in the back studying, and like sometimes we'd get a call and I'd have to get up, right? Or someone would come at the door, right? So I never had the luxury of having a blocked out period. I had to learn how to adjust to immediately turn on a dime and say, okay, I got to study. You know what I mean? Because I don't know how much time I'm going to have before the next phone call or the next customer. So I feel like that's probably why I'm really good at just like, you know what I mean, adapting. It's a privilege to be able to say like, oh, I'm going to write every day, right? And that's great for those people that have or that grew up with a life that gave them that type of privilege, but I just never had it, so, yeah. Okay. So.
We've got time for a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah, is there any particular story in the book that has more meaning for you, or is a favorite that you told?
Well, I mean, I read the one about my mom. Yeah, because I wrote the book for her. The one that I think also would make a good movie is, you know, the Yul Brynner story. Yeah, I don't know if you guys. So Yul Brynner is like the big star, and so like you know, he had actually asked our restaurant to serve as to host a private cast party for him. You know, and my dad was really excited because he had this chip on his shoulder. He thought that people didn't respect Chinese food, right? Like the way they respect French food and all this stuff. So he was really excited that, oh my God, this Oscar-winning star wants to like, you know, hire us to like, you know, do the cast party. So he spends that whole week, right, like making sure the restaurant is spotless, right? You know, ordering new, you know, napkins and all that kind of stuff, and even getting ice cream. Like we never had ice cream in our restaurant, but he bought ice cream for fucking Yul Brynner. And then, so when Yul Brynner comes in, he's kind of a dick to everybody, right? And so the hokey twist in that is that like, you know, all these people spent the whole week like, you know, raising this guy up, but the real hero in that room was my dad, the Chinese waiter, who was just trying to make someone have a good night. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like that's a hokey story that would make a nice movie, like a Big Night. You know, I don't know if you guys know that movie, the Stanley Tucci film, Big Night. Yeah, so it'd be Big Night set in a Chinese restaurant. Yeah, so that would be a fun screenplay to do. Yeah. So, I think that's it, right?
You've got like 6 more minutes until 8:30, but I do want to make sure that people have time to go and buy your book, which is here.
Yes, and I will sign them. So 6 minutes.
I just want to make you aware there's a great festival up in northern Michigan, Harbor Springs, called Festival of the Book.
Oh.
They have writers from all over the world, but the country. It's not necessarily just a Michigan.
It's in September.
Yeah, it's in September. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I would love to do these things. I mean, I don't have the bandwidth to oftentimes investigate where things are, but my book did get picked by Michigan as a notable book for last year. So there's a big ceremony coming up in April, which I'm coming back for. So maybe they'll hear about it from that, right? That's what I'm hoping. I hate to sound like, you know what I mean?
No, I know.
Yeah.
I'll email them too.
Oh yeah, and you guys can contact me if you guys hear of any opportunities. Feel free, you can reach me through Facebook or through Instagram, you know, or through my website. But yeah, I'm happy to follow up any opportunities. Huh?
I think you'd really appreciate it because, you know, it's Northern Michigan.
I've never even been to Traverse City. Like I don't, yeah. What? I'm a Detroit boy. We don't go up that way. What? It's like everything west of Ann Arbor is like, what? I have no concept what's beyond there. Yeah. Look.
I have a question going back to your book. I haven't read the third section, but in the second section,
It's the best section. I'm kidding.
you talk a lot about, you know, your kind of commitment and interest in social justice, writing
Yeah.
editorials, all the things you do in high school, being interested in politics or becoming a politician. I don't know if you covered this in the book, is my point, but when did that shift for you?
When did I stop being a Republican?
I guess. Or not necessarily the Republican, but just that, seeing yourself in that, like, path.
Not being a Republican.
I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so I say in the book, and it's coming up fairly soon in the third section, it's Michigan that did it, going out to Ann Arbor. So there were basically three A policies, right, that sort of got me to start to shift. The first was apartheid. Right? I didn't understand how Reagan was supporting that clearly racist policy to me. The second one was AIDS. Back then, the Republicans had this concept called compassionate conservatism. And as a Buddhist, we're taught compassion. It's like, oh, this is right up my alley. But then, you know, I'd go to Republican meetings, and certainly whenever that subject came up, it was not compassionate at all. I mean, it was awful. And the third actually happened in college, you know, where the third issue is abortion. Because as a gay guy, I thought I was never going to get a girl pregnant, so why would I care, right? So I was pro-life, right? It doesn't bother me. And then these two women at U of M, two friends, were, you know, made me see that it really was just more fundamental. It's about controlling your own body. And I thought to myself, oh, well, that's what I want to do as a gay person. So that's when I finally shifted over. But I didn't tell them right away, because the fun part about making liberals squirm is that it's very easy to just sort of like take, you know, positions and make them unhappy. And so I did wait a little before telling them that I had switched my position. But yeah, so pretty much by college, mid-college, yeah, I switched over. So, but I do feel like, you know, it does sadden me that we live in this world where our country is right now, where the two parties are so, you know, diametrically opposed to each other. Because I don't operate that way. I do vote Democratic. But that doesn't mean I think that the Democrats have all the answers. I don't think they're right 100% of the time, just like I don't think the Republicans are wrong 100% of the time. Sometimes they have good ideas. I would like us to get back to those old days where you can compromise across aisle, right? Yeah, we all have fundamental ways that we sort of see the world, but that doesn't mean people who look at it differently can't also be right. And it's also okay to listen to them sometimes. So one of the reasons I did want to write this book was that I feel like Chinese restaurants, and food in general, but Chinese restaurants in particular, may open or offer that opportunity, right? Because Chinese restaurants are one of those few places where you can go in and see somebody from a different race or class or socioeconomic background or religion or whatever. And if you just leaned across one day and just said, hey, what are you eating? Like maybe those are just the fundamental steps that we need to take as a country to even just start having civil conversations with each other, because it doesn't seem like we can even do that. So yeah, so that is my journey. But I also think that like the 80s and what happened with the Republican Party back then is a really good learning opportunity, right? Because Reagan is the one that actually coined the phrase, make America great again. He's the one that went after the white working class voters, which is the core of the Trump base, right? And so if you want to examine, you know, Trump, I think you have to look back at Reagan in the 80s, right, as to how that all happened, and also the introduction of the religious right to politics. So, okay, think we're done?
Great.
Okay. Thank you everybody for coming. Feel free to follow me. I do leave for Missouri tomorrow morning, so this is, on this particular run. But I'll be back, I think I'm back in Michigan like 5 times before May. But yeah, look me up, tell your friends about the book, write reviews on Goodreads or Amazon, all those places, and buy books. So thank you everybody. Okay.